Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, we try to distill 15 games into 25 minutes, and we're not going to succeed. The Knicks get an overtime win. Oklahoma City pulls off a crazy comeback, and Jovan Buha is going to join us to talk about Luka and the Lakers and their loss to the Utah Jazz. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, S.
Good morning, Dave.
My head is spinning.
Yeah,
because there were 15 basketball games last night. Shout out to Trey Kirby from No Ducks, by the way, for pointing out only 3 of the games featured teams that where both teams were above 500.
Yeah.
Rough night. We're limping into the All-Star break.
I think everybody is,
These
everybody
nights,
needs that.
This night where they just cram 15 games, it feels like cramming for a test, right?
Yes.
They got to get everyone to All-Star. We still got like 5 games Thursday night. So still a few teams not quite at the All-Star break, although some of them tried to act like it.
Oh, yeah.
Night.
I mean, look, Damian Lillard is like, hey, I can't play today, but I'll see you on Saturday.
He played back-to-back 40-minute games, man. I don't blame him. And hey,
that's true.
You know what? We're not even going to talk about that game because we don't have time, but Minnesota lost anyway.
Yes,
so
they lost.
What is he? I mean, he took a break and Milwaukee gets a win. Doc Rivers out there coaching his butt off. So let's jump into it a little bit because there was some crazy stuff happening last night. The Knicks somehow blew an 18-point lead and had to go to overtime to beat the Hawks. And the final score wound up being 149-148. The Knicks get the win, the highest scoring game of the season. But as the end of this game was kind of hilarious. First of all, the Knicks just looked tired down the stretch. Offense, they just could not score down the stretch. They couldn't get a stop down the stretch. It was just not great. And the game looked like it was about to be over for the Knicks. They just had a big enough lead and maybe it held off. They were up 6 with 10 seconds to go. Then the Hawks get a 3 from Georges Niang, which kind of just don't expect that to happen. Okay, all right, no big deal. You get the inbound. You're playing the free throw game. You're in the home stretch. Well, there's a poor inbounds pass to Karl-Anthony Towns, who's being guarded by Dyson Daniels. You know his nickname?
Oh, yeah, the Great Barrier Thief.
Yeah, very good at stealing the basketball. So he gets a steal on the inbound pass. This is the guy that you need to know where he's at all times. So Daniels hits the first free throw. They're down 3. He meant to make the second one.
He did mean to make the second one.
And I was thinking this whole time, Dyson Daniels, maybe, not a great free throw shooter, but maybe he's been working on this. No, he just missed. Yep. Atlanta gets the rebound. The ball finds its way to Trae Young. Trae Young finds his way to the free throw line, as he's apt to do. Yep. And we got overtime. This game was pretty absurd as far as the shot making and scoring. Karl-Anthony Towns, 44 points. That's back-to-back 40s for him. Trae Young, 38-19. But, man, Trae and the Knicks, they can't have a normal basketball game.
Especially in MSG. Like, you know, the history behind Trae against, I mean, you could hear the chants in the arena and the groaning of the Knicks fans where it's like, oh, come on, really? Another game versus Trae where we got to go through this?
I thought he had a game winner in him.
I really did, too. When they were down 3 and they had a chance to, I mean, that would have been just sweet victory for the Hawks fans. I think this game, though, if you look at it, is like Jalen Brunson masterclass. Towards the end of the game, especially in overtime, he had this really clutch shot to seal the deal for them. He's been awesome throughout this year. I mean, he's headed to the All-Star weekend for a reason. I think, look, when the offense is the way that this Knicks team is trying to win, it's a guy like Brunson that can lead the way. And then like Trae versus Brunson, that was an awesome guard matchup throughout the whole night, which was really fun.
Speaking of offense,
Jamal Murray, got a lot of it today.
A ton.
Yeah.
A ton of offense. Jamal Murray found his offensive groove in the last few weeks, and I don't know if we've really had a chance to talk about it, S. He put up 55 last night as the Nuggets beat the Blazers, which, by the way, 2 sicko games back-to-back this week, although no DeAndre Ayton for the Blazers, so they obviously not as good as they have been. But Jamal Murray, I think we need to talk about him. 55 points in this game. He's been very consistent, I would say, since Christmas. Like he looks like he's just in better physical shape. Totally. Obviously, just the shot has fallen. What'd you think about Jamal Murray last night?
Yeah, I mean, 55 points is 55 points against anybody. Like getting into that type of rhythm. And by the way, speaking of Canadian, I'm glad you brought it up. The most by a Canadian in NBA history. It was Shea a couple of weeks ago when we talked about it. Now Jamal Murray has beat him already. It's just Canadians doing well. What could I say? Look, Jamal has been awesome for the last 2 months. You mentioned since Christmas. I have his numbers since January. 22 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. And the shooting splits are crazy. 50% from the field, 40% from three, 91% from the free throw line. He's an excellent free throw shooter. Doing it on a high volume of threes as well. He's knocking down or taking 6 threes a game. That part of it is massive for the Nuggets because you think of their 3-point rate. They don't take a lot of threes. It's him and Jokic that are the guys, and Michael Porter Jr. who are spacing the floor. But Murray's been awesome, and he really changes the equation for this Nuggets team. They're on an 8-game winning streak for a reason. They've been awesome for the last 2 months. They've been climbing up the Western Conference standings. They're now half a game back of second in the West. Jokic is out there playing MVP historic level basketball too. And so you look at the West and you're like, well, there's OKC, which we'll get to in a second, and there's Denver, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that those are the top 2 teams, especially now that the Mavericks made the Luka Doncic trade. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what their situation is going to look like in the middle.
Don't know what the Lakers look like. Don't know what the totally.
Yeah. Jokic, by the way, 26, 15 rebounds, 10 assists, just a ho-hum triple-double for him. You have to score 55 points for us to basically just not really talk about Jokic in a Nuggets game. You mentioned we're going to talk about the Thunder. I thought we were going to talk about the Miami Heat.
I know. I was excited to do it with you too.
We were watching this game and we were getting excited. We're going to talk about the Heat first. Because the Heat jumped out to a pretty big lead in the game, and they were looking good. And I'm thinking, all right, finally, we can talk new look Heat. Yeah. Andrew Wiggins with Bam Adebayo and Khalil Ware just makes so much sense. And when you add Davion Mitchell out there, I mean, that's a monster defensive unit. And I like how fast they're playing. It really did. I think it caught OKC off guard to start the game.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And this is sort of a trend to start post-trade deadline for them. They're just playing a lot quicker. Davion especially is like pushing the pace for them in transition. A guy like Andrew Wiggins also helps them play faster because he's such a great athlete. And so Miami now has this identity. I believe pre-deadline, they were like 3rd worst in pace. And I imagine that definitely changes now with this new nucleus. They're just playing really quick. And that makes Miami Heat basketball fun. They're kind of fun to watch now because of how fast they play. But unfortunately, not the results that Heat fans probably wanted tonight.
No. The Thunder are really the most disruptive defense
they're very good.
Ever. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a monster. Oklahoma City was down 93 to 83 at the end of the third.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City started the fourth quarter on a 24-0 run. They held Miami to 8 points in the fourth quarter. They just flipped a switch.
Yes, they just flipped the switch. And that is the makings of a championship level team, right? To be able to flip that switch automatically and say, okay, we're done playing around now. We're trying to win this game, and then go on runs where and it's a defensive run. Sure, the offense propelled them. Great shot making. You can talk about Shai and the way that he just dominates and takes over games, but it's the defensive side of the ball that gets them going, right? It's forcing turnovers, getting out in transition, deflections, blocks, steals, the whole shebang. Like you said, they're the most disruptive defense in the NBA. They're probably one of the most disruptive defenses in NBA history. And to limit a team to 8 points in a single quarter and do what they did to the Miami Heat is special, special levels of defense.
And then the late game, new look Warriors. So we're tuning in, we got to see what does it look like with Jimmy Butler out there. Yeah. And it was a fun game, especially if you like to watch Kyrie Irving do ridiculous things, which is what it would take for the Mavericks to actually hold on and win the game. I mean, he went nuts in the third quarter. He wound up with 42 points for the game. He actually had the game sealing offensive foul that he drew on Jimmy Butler, who was driving with a chance to tie the game extremely late. This was a beautiful performance from Kyrie. Mm-hmm. They don't have a center right now, and they basically had to try to outscore the Warriors and out hustle. And man, they just did it. They were it was desperate basketball from Kyrie Irving, which, I don't normally see outside of the playoffs.
Yeah, he actually was talking post game on ESPN, and he was mentioning how this was sort of like an emotional game for everybody in the arena, but given everything that's happened with the fans and the trade and everything. It just felt like the arena and everybody in there needed that. And so that third quarter run where he's going on the barrage of 3-point shot after 3-point shot and the arena is bubbling up with him, you could feel that tension of let's just get something going good for the Mavericks right now, because there's not a whole lot going well right now for them.
Right.
But you get the win. I think this team is really impressive defensively, regardless of the injuries. Like, they're missing their entire front court, and somehow, some way, they still find ways to win on the defensive end, which is really, really impressive. Kyrie making the game-winning, block, if you will, or charge, whatever you want to call it, and then the shot making. It's awesome, awesome stuff from the Mavs, even in spite of the craziness of the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, we should mention that they did report on the broadcast. Nobody was ejected, although some signs were asked to be put away.
Although they didn't do the Jumbotron tonight, so no Jumbotron tonight out there.
I mean, I want to give the fans that were in the building kind of credit, because it's not like they're just out there being bad fans. Like, they were into the game.
Yeah.
I think the fan story of the Mavericks is probably what we're going to pay attention to, like co-equal to the team for the rest of the season. Just like, how do they recover the goodwill?
For sure. It's a prevailing storyline moving forward, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure that Christian Clark will be, unfortunately, having to write about that a lot. Yeah, a lot this season. Guys, stick around after the break. We got Jovan Buha live from the arena, and he's going to talk about what happened with the Lakers last night. It's never a good thing when you get beat pretty badly by the Utah Jazz, especially this Jazz team. But you know what? Jovan was there, so we had to bring him in to talk about it. The Lakers now 2 games under their belt with Luka Doncic. Obviously, the second one, not great for them, to lose to a Utah team, especially since the Lakers have been so hot. What's your first impression of the first couple games, realizing it's early and, a lot of moving parts? But what do you think so far about the Luka era?
I think things are going to be fine, despite this embarrassing loss to the Utah Jazz. They just blew out the Jazz, and I think there's a human element of you blow out a team, you play them again 2 days later, and tonight I think they just took their foot off the pedal, and also did not have I think so. To get into how this team has been playing, that they've won 12 of 15, but they've done it by having pretty much everybody healthy, and they've AD missed a couple games. They obviously made the Luka trade, and but for the most part, their core 7 or 8 guys have largely been there. And I think tonight they were missing Dorian Finney-Smith and Gabe Vincent. And I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but them not having Dorian Finney-Smith and Gabe Vincent, those are 2 of their 3 best perimeter defenders. And this is not a group that has a lot of perimeter defense. So just missing the combined 45 to 50 minutes from those guys, I think really compromised them on the perimeter. And then you throw in Jackson Hayes gets injured in the first quarter, and all of a sudden they're throwing Alex Len in, who played 22 minutes. And I don't think anyone expected Alex Len to play 22 minutes. It went.
I don't think Alex Len expected Alex Len.
He did not. It went about as bad as expected. In the competitive portion of the game, they were outscored by 19 points in his 14 minutes. He got blocked on a dunk attempt, by Walker Kessler. And he just did not look like a rotation level center, which is what I think he is not a rotation level center. But yeah, as far as the Luka stuff, really, I think the first game was more emblematic of what this group's going to look like, which is Luka LeBron 2-man game. Guys have talked about having to adjust to being ready for a pass at any point when Luka has the ball, and that's been he's thrown some. I mean, and of course
he hit
we
Austin
know
Reeves
this
with that behind the back from underneath.
That was
the
insane.
Basket.
He's driving and just throws this behind the back bullet pass to Austin Reeves, 15, 20 feet away. At the top of the arc, and Austin hits an open 3. So you've seen, but there's even been he had one pass where he was coming off of a pick and roll and looking to the corner, toward I forgot who was in the corner, but Rui was on the opposite wing, and he just jumps and throws this bullet, jump pass across the corner to Rui, and Rui's bobbling the ball because he wasn't expecting that. So already you've seen Luka's imprints on the offense. Tonight, what was a little bit it was rough. He had 5 turnovers, and I think he's still getting acclimated to the offense. And he talked about being off for 6 weeks and still feeling out his calf strain that he's been dealing with. So I think that there was a lot of things that went against them tonight, but in general, I think this team between Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves has an incredible amount of playmaking and shot creation. And I think when we look at this team's ceiling, it's really going to come from those 3 guys leading the charge. And basically, like, it's been a clinic when they've been out there. Like, they are maximizing every possession outside of some of the growing pains with the turnovers. It's like they are finding the best shot possible and putting defenses, so far the Utah defense, in compromising positions where if you double, Luka's going to find the open man. If you double, LeBron's going to find the open man. And if one of those 2 is the open man, then you're in trouble. So I think that they're still figuring out how to play with one another, but you see the potential, especially on the offensive end.
Yeah, we actually, Dave and I talked about this a couple of days ago, but like, you don't want to face LeBron and Luka in a postseason series. Like, this is the crux of facing the Lakers in the postseason. You just don't want to face those 2 guys with the basketball acumen and basketball IQ that they have. But obviously the center rotation is going to be a big part of that too. And you just mentioned the Alex Len situation, Jackson Hayes getting hurt tonight, Christian Koloko. That's their center rotation. Like, that's who they have at this point. Is there anything else that they could go to? Will they explore the buyout market elsewhere to see if they can improve on that front? And also, given their roster, you just mentioned Dorian Finney-Smith. There's also Jared Vanderbilt, who they can play in more of a small ball lineup. Will they just lean smaller and just play smaller and play that kind of defensive switch 1 through 5 type of lineup like they did through this winning stretch?
I think that's the fully formed version of this group. I would suspect that their best closing lineup ends up being something like Jared Vanderbilt, Dorian Finney-Smith, LeBron, Luka, and Austin. If Rui really has it going and it's not a matchup where he can be exploited defensively, maybe Rui's in there for one of Dorian or Vando. But I think this is a group that's just ultimately going to have to go small. And I think that's actually the way JJ wants to play. If you gave him truth serum, like, it felt like before the Luka trade, they were forming this identity, but it wasn't quite the right pieces. And now having Luka, another forward sized guy who can fit within a switching scheme. And yes, of course, he's not like a stopper or anything, but he's still 6'7", 200 and however many pounds. He's a good defensive rebounder. And already we've seen, like, he's been able to deflect passes, and like he can be a bit disruptive on the defensive end, though obviously he can be targeted, blown by, etc. Yeah. So I think the fully formed version of this group is probably going to be like 25 to 30 minutes a night of small ball in the playoffs. And then the rest of the time will be Jackson Hayes. And I will give Jackson Hayes his props because he has been playing much better lately. And the rim protection's been better. The rebounding's been better. He's been staying out of foul trouble. So, like, offensively, Jackson Hayes has always been this guy of, like, he's a vertical lob threat who makes a lot of sense with Luka. Has been playing well with LeBron and Austin. So I think offensively, like, he's a rim runner. He's going to set screens. He's going to play with energy, get out in transition. Like, I think he could be a placeholder center for like 18 to 22 minutes in the playoffs. But the rest of the time, I don't think the answer is Alex Len. Of course, 2-way guys cannot play in the playoffs. So my understanding of the situation is the Lakers have one more move they can make in terms of waiving one more guy and signing another player. So I think that they're going to monitor the buyout market and see if, Larry Nance just got injured. I think he would have been a potential guy that could have helped them, also fit into kind of like that small ball identity. But does a Kelly Olynyk get bought out? Does a Chris Boucher or does some other, rotation caliber big man get bought out? And from a talent perspective, like, that player is just better than Alex Len. They go and try and sign that guy and give them basically Len's role. Or actually, Jordan Goodwin's been playing really well for them. He has. He's someone that they've really enjoyed with South Bay. They just converted him to a 2-way contract, but he's come in and had a nice couple of games for them. So I think he's also someone on their radar as a potential guy that, like, comparing him to a Shake Milton or a Cam Reddish, I think they'd rather have him on the roster, ahead of those guys. So I think they're going to survey their options, that they have some time to make these decisions. But ultimately, I think as things stand, Jackson's going to be the starter. He's going to be the placeholder. And if he's playing well and staying out of foul trouble, maybe there's some nights he plays 25, 28 minutes. but more often than not, it is going to be this group just leaning into small ball. And those lineups have been crushing it, actually. Like Vando and Vando played a lot of small ball center in Brooklyn before the trade. DFS did. And then Vando, honestly, with the way that Vando operates offensively, he is kind of like a center because of the lack of gravity and spacing. So I think it's going to be weird. They're going to have to gang rebound, and like the rotations are going to have to be on point. The margin for error is going to be slim, but I think they're betting that like we have Luka, LeBron, and Austin. We can outscore you, and then defensively we can get just enough stops to beat you.
I'm glad you mentioned Dorian Finney-Smith. That Western Conference Finals run that the Mavs made a couple years ago, he was playing 4 and 5 almost exclusively during the playoff run. I mean, their huge switching attack defensively was because he was able to do that. And, if Steve Kerr would probably be saying, hey, what about LeBron playing some 5? And I think we're going to see some of that. His rim protection is maybe even underrated, which is funny to say about LeBron. But they did have a guy on their radar. They made a trade for a guy, Jovan. We saw Dalton connect. He was back out there for the Lakers last night. So we got to talk about this Mark Williams trade that's been rescinded. We're hearing that the Hornets might be trying to force some sort of a mock trial
by fire
to get to the bottom of this thing. I mean, are we going to do trial by combat at All-Star game? Add that to All-Star Saturday night. It's going to be, we'll figure that out. I don't know if we're going to have to do like LaMelo versus LeBron with a joust on the scorer's table or what, but what is the latest on this weird situation with Mark Williams in the trade?
I think it should be Rob Pelinka versus Jeff Peterson. I think those two should duke it out. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, this is a crazy situation, and
it is
even now. Like Dalton had to answer the question, last night in Utah about what happens if this trade gets reversed again, and like you have to go back to Charlotte, because the crazy thing funny. with Dalton compared to Mark Williams was Dalton actually went to Charlotte and was introduced and met the staff and met everybody. So like for like 2 days, Dalton Connect like was a Hornet. Whereas Mark Williams, he went to LA and he went through the physical and stuff, but he was never like officially introduced. He was never, kind of went through a practice with them or anything. So it's even weirder for Dalton to be a rookie, get traded 40 something games into your season. It's a shock. He told us that he was shooting free throws at practice the day after their game against the Clippers. And he gets called into Rob Pelinka's office and gets told like, hey, we're trading you to Charlotte. And that, it's just this whirlwind of like a week that he's been through. But in terms of the Mark Williams situation, my understanding is like the Lakers are not concerned about the situation, and that basically as long as they can prove why they rescinded the trade and why they feel the way that they feel about his medicals, that like they basically have like a 99% chance of the trade staying rescinded and it not being reversed. And, I was trying to think, like, could there be a
1% chance though, right?
Could there be a penalty? Could there be something of like they get fined or maybe like lose a second round pick or something? Like maybe, I don't know. But like, I think they're pretty confident about what they found being troubling and being enough to rescind the trade. And it is a weird situation because my understanding is like, it's not necessarily a current injury that he's going through, but in putting him through imaging and seeing certain things with his body, they were like, we do not have long-term confidence in how, he's going to progress. So it's not really like a current, and I think that's where Charlotte's contending is that they're saying like, he's not currently injured or unavailable. So you can't, It's not like even, the Anthony Davis situation was kind of interesting, and Luka, like just both guys being injured when they got traded. Then you see, Luka comes back. He's been fine since being back, but AD comes back. He plays one game and he gets re-injured with the same injury, even worse in the same game. So it's kind of a tricky situation here, but my understanding is like teams, this is like, it would be unprecedented to have a trade be reversed. And my understanding is if the Lakers can have an external doctor co-sign their assessment of the situation, they're going to be fine. And again, I think Charlotte, like optically, it was an unfortunate situation for them. And like, if they are trying to push for this trade to go through, I think the optics of it end up looking better for them and worse for the Lakers. But like, ultimately, I don't think it's going to be reversed.
Right.
The Dalton Connect situation reminds me of a story from my own life. I had 2 first days of school in my first grade. I got on the wrong bus and went to the wrong elementary school my first day. Made a bunch of buddies, loved my teacher, and found out that I was absent when I got home.
Wow.
So yeah,
that must have
had
been
2
tough.
first days of school in first grade. Nothing wrong with that. Hey, I'm good at showing up in new places, making new friends. Guys, go and follow Jovan over at The Athletic. It's the easiest way to get all of his work. And also check him out on YouTube. What's the YouTube channel?
Just search Jovan Buha or Buha's Block, and you'll find my YouTube and my podcast.
There you go.
Buha's
and he
Block.
does all the
Love
post game. So it's if he's not here, that's what he's doing. Thank you, Jovan, for hanging out and staying up late for us. For Jovan, Buha, and Es Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.